Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us once again. Here we come with a new video. Now, this time we continue our task, our venture of talking about the stalemates, the impasses we might come up against when we are dealing with our well-being, our psychological well-being, our physical well-being. And today we're going to dedicate some time to understand the slight difference. It's a subtlety, but it is something that made us choose the name impasse in preference to obstacle. Why that? Because you see, well, I say impasses to well-being. I say obstacles to well-being. Yes, definitely, it's the most comfortable expression is obstacle. But when you talk about an obstacle, there might be an intuitive idea that's slightly divergent to what we are trying to reach here. Let's go to it. When we talk about an obstacle, then usually there is a sense, again, obstacle and impasse are synonymous. But when we talk about an obstacle, we have the sense of something. Our intuition sends us the idea that the obstacle is something external. It's an outer situation which is exotic to my will. It comes independent from my will. And that superimposes itself on my path. That's basically the idea of an obstacle is something that was unforeseen, something that is from outside. I'm walking on a path and then a rock appears in front of me. Or I am striving, I'm on my way to buying a house, a real estate. And I come up against a law I didn't know existed. And that law can get in the way of my acquisition of the house. It kind of gets in the way for my purchasing the house. That would be an obstacle because the law was something I wasn't aware of. It is something outside my inner experience, obviously, and it's something that can get in the way of what I wish, what I would like to achieve. So, an obstacle, a hurdle, a glitch. If you think of sports and you think about the glitch in the race, it's something that is put there to get in my way. But it's something completely external to my organism, kind of. Whereas on the other hand, the impasse, the stalemate, is something that also from our intuition, it comes to us. It's more of a consequence of conditions which are imposed by myself. Now, these conditions can be my values. I decide to delve into a new kind of business. I decide to invest my money. And then I start investing my money in certain commodities, in certain actives. And then I realize that that MO kind of hurts some values I have. I'm not talking about cigarette industry, alcohol industry. No, I'm talking about the MO in itself. I say, I don't know, this isn't quite as good as I would like it to be. I'm not feeling very keen on making money like this. That is also an impasse. But that is imposed by me. Why? Because I want to get in my own way? No, because I have to accommodate. I have to put in place several demands in my life. That's how we work. We work surrounded by demands. We are surrounded by requests. We are surrounded by expectations. So we have to kind of accommodate all these things in order to go ahead with things. When one of these things or two of these things start conflicting, they get intertwined or maybe they start wrestling one with the other, they get tangled up, then we might have some kind of stress, some kind of suffering associated. And we can have an example here of it's in our mythology, which is a very paradigmatic example of what we are trying to express here, which is King Midas. King Midas, as some of you might know, was the king of Phrygia. Actually, Midas is the name of several actual historical kings of a region called Phrygia, which today is occupied by Turkey, the country of Turkey. It was Phrygia. Those of you who watched our previous video on Aesop recall that Aesop was a Phrygian. He was a Phrygian slave living in Athens. I think it was Athens, I'm not sure now. But anyway, he was a slave and he was a dwarf. He's believed to have some kind of nanism, and consequently he wasn't very akin to labor. Wasn't very prone to physical labor. He wasn't very large, so he dedicated himself to telling stories to children, and he did such a good job of it. He came to be such a huge storyteller that once he had paid his debt, he had been freed from his slave condition, he remained where he was, continued to do what he did, but now as a free man. And this, coming back to Phrygia, so Phrygia is a place that in the past used to bear some very important people. Midas was the name of a series of kings. The first of them, the mythical one, is probably non-existent. Or if he existed, certain things were attributed to him which were not actually biographic. But anyway, the first Midas had the fortune and the misfortune of a satyr belonging to Dionysus, a satyr called Silenus. Silenus got lost. He went errant and he got lost, and he was found in Midas' dominions. And he was taken to the king, and the king realized who some people say he went astray because he fell. Others say he got so drunk he got lost. But anyway, he was supposed to be the best satyr. Of course, he was a personal satyr to Dionysus. In some traditions, he is considered a god, not a satyr. And he was found by peasants who took him to Midas, and Midas had him there with him for about 10 days in his court. And once he was quite sure it was Silenus, then he got a committee, and they went to, I don't know where, but they went to Dionysus. And they gave Dionysus Silenus back. Apparently, as far as I can see, Silenus was typified as an elder. He was an older man. He wasn't young. He was aged. At least that's what we see in the images that people use, the ancient ones, to typify him. Then what happened was Dionysus was so thankful to Midas, because Midas was not greedy, didn't decide to seize the satyr for himself. He decided to give him back, that he granted him the possibility of having one wish become true. So he would get one blessing as a return for bringing Silenus back safe and sound. Unaware of how a good wish could turn out, Midas says, okay, then let's say whatever I touch turns into gold. How about that? Dionysus said, okay, that's your wish, done. Then he went home with the caravan, and very happy because everything he touched turned into gold. It was probably a very amusing time for him, very amusing hours, because imagine everything you touch turns into gold, masses massive gold. And then he gets home. But when he decides to make a banquet to commemorate his good alliance with Dionysus. But as soon as the banquet is being served, he discovers that whatever he touches turns into gold, and that included food and wine. And the description of the story in the original is so touching, because he says he looks at the story tells us that he looks at his wine, and his wine turns ice solid. So it's not only solid, but it's ice solid. It's kind of cold. It's kind of without life, lifeless, unable to serve, to be of use for a life being. Then he realizes the size of his blunder. In some traditions, some later traditions, there is the idea that he touched his daughter, and his daughter turned into a gold statue, which said that all his posterity, all the future, was damned to turn into lifeless gold. So what does he do? What human beings do when they regret something? They see to changing things back to a better perspective. He goes back to Dionysus and says, look, you know that blessing, yeah, I'd like to I'd like to retrieve it. And then Dionysus, he tells the story. Dionysus says, okay, I think you're right. And he says, just go and wash yourself in such and such and such a stream in the river. And he went, and he said that as he put his hands in the water, all the sand in the bottom of the river, beginning from where he was, went turning into gold. And then he was free. He was able to feed himself again. Now, this comes to show that, one, people say, oh, Midas was greedy. He was greedy in the same proportion that a human being can be greedy. There is no evidence he was overly greedy. And then there's something else. If he were really a greedy, selfish guy, he wouldn't have taken Silenus back to Dionysus. He just would have stayed with him in his court, and that's it. Dionysus wasn't aware of it. In Portuguese we say, what is found is not stolen. O que é achado não é roubado. The peasants found Silenus asleep in his yard. He took him for himself. He gives him back. He says, this belongs to a god. This guy belongs to a god. Let me give him back. So he wasn't being greedy, unloyal, or dishonest. None of that. He did what he thought. That might be a good way to increase the wealth of my kingdom. But there was one defect. He was linear and he was literal in what he asked. He didn't ask, I would like my kingdom to become more prosperous. I wish my kingdom became more profitable. People lived better. We had more wealth, more comfort, and more food and wine. No, he said, I want gold. So he was linear and he was literal in his wish. He really didn't want gold. He wanted wealth. But he was unable to realize he was being literal and he was being linear in what he asked the god. And Dionysus said, okay, here you go. Got what you wanted. And that can happen to us in our lives. Sometimes we strive for something. We head for something. But we are being literal and linear. We are not aware of what really we want. What do I really want when everything I touch turns into gold? I want to be wealthy. I don't want to convert the planet Earth into gold. That's not the idea. These are the harmful effects of both linearity and literality. In the way, now coming out of the mythical pages of the past and into our trivial daily menial lives, the harmful effects of linearity and literality in our daily lives, in the way we notice ourselves. So Midas lost sight of his need to feed, and he lost sight. Why? Because he lost sight of what he really wanted. Again, he didn't want gold. He wanted wealth. He was just a king wishing more wealth, but he made a poor choice, not of words, a poor choice of strategy. Both psychoanalysis, cognitive behavioral therapy, and other lineages of psychotherapy, they all work a lot. And every one of us who works with psychodynamic or cognitive work, psychotherapy, they soon realize that there are two things about us, ourselves. The one is, a human being knows more than he tells himself. So we know more than we tell ourselves, we know more than we tell our therapist. And the second thing is, we tell ourselves things, we tell ourselves more than we know. We tell our therapist more than we realize. And we tell ourselves, we know about ourselves more than we tell ourselves. There is a disjunction between what we know of ourselves and what we tell about ourselves. In great measure, that is due to a flaw in the word, in our vocabulary, to be able to express these things. But on another hand, there is something also about the way we see ourselves, or let the Lord, the grace, gear us, of seeing ourselves as others see us. It's a very ancient, I think it's Robert Burns, a Scottish poem, a Scottish poet from a few centuries ago. Now, this is important to realize. This doesn't mean our mind functioning is a bad machine. It's quite the contrary. It's a brilliant way of working that can produce equally brilliant strategies, but also some brilliant decoys. And we can trap ourselves, we can cheat ourselves. These decoys might be the stalemates that can freeze us and freeze us toward stressful states. But sometimes something prevents me of doing something, and I cannot understand very much what stops me. It's not something I can understand. Whatever I tell myself is not sufficient. What I tell other people doesn't. There's something that needs to be attended, and that's brilliant. It's like the meta-memory resources we have in our central nervous system. We have the memory, and then you have the meta-memory. When I can't recall a name, I know I can't recall that name, but I know that name. That's fantastic. That's absolutely... No. I know the name of that street. I know it, but it doesn't come to me. And then you stop thinking 15 seconds later, oh, it's so and so and so. So this is extremely important. When we are dealing with mindfulness, when we're dealing with contemplation, when we are dealing with our own inner experience, we must recall that we just register what we witness. We don't try to go telling ourselves stories. Usually these stories can put us in very, very, very bad situations, like King Midas. Be careful what you aim, because what you aim you just might hit. And if we do it in a linear or in a literal fashion, we might get ourselves hurt here and there. Of course, we don't believe in great mistakes or great dangers, but sufficient mistakes and dangers to compromise our well-being and take us to live a less satisfactory, satisfying life. Thank you very much for your presence today. We will be talking a little more within a few days' time. We're going to go inner to the outer aspects of the impasses and obstacles. Thank you very much. See you soon.